So going forward, moving on, macroeconomy, so you have made it very clear that the fundamentals are strong. In fact, the DA Secretary was indicating that possibly 3.5% to 4% is how the inflation may look like towards the end of the financial year.
See, I think the fundamentals are fairly strong. The inflation is broadly under control. We've maintained fiscal discipline so far. The current account deficit is under control. The exports are moving upwards. And if you see, post the first quarter, the early indications which have come out all seem to be pointing out in a slightly better direction than the first quarter itself. And that should be good news for the Indian economy.
Right, sir. So also, GST collection is something that people keep asking about all the time, and everybody is, watching that very closely. Now, you did mention yesterday that around 92 to 93 odd thousand crores on a monthly basis is not a bad number at all. It's a very good sign. Does this indicate that possibly, at least for the current financial year, in terms of our indirect tax receipt target, we will be on target, sir?
You see, I don't think a pattern has become clear as yet, because you are still in the transition stage where goods manufactured under the old tax regime are being sold now, and therefore a lot of transitional tax is continuing. Once the transitional tax phase is over, then you will know what is the level of the collections itself. I think the only indication that is coming, which seems to be a positive one, is that the number of people who are registering themselves for payment of GST as assessees, the figure has now crossed 1 crore. 72 lakh of the old ones and more than 28 lakhs of the new one. So you are in excess of 1 crore, and that I think is very good news.
So one more question on that front. In fact, industry has been raising this thing that deregistrations are actually not allowed as a comfort, a further comfort to taxpayers. I suppose in the last meeting of the council this was okay, but yet to probably.
You see, I'll tell you, the software system also takes its time to attune itself to the new decisions. And I'm sure once we decide in the council, it takes a little time for the software system. In fact, in a manual system, you take a decision and you can implement it immediately. But then to attune the software system, it takes a lot more time.
Right, sir. So also a lot of queries are being raised on the functioning and the efficacy of the GST. And can we expect any further strengthening on that front?
No, as far as the registration part is concerned and the payment and filing of returns is concerned, I think it has smoothened itself out substantially. First month, there was a lot of difficulties and challenges coming out. I think it's gradually smoothening itself out. And now that from the next month, for the small traders and the manufacturers, it will become a quarterly return. So the number of registrants itself will radically fall. And therefore, that also will improve it further. I think the next stage is going to be the invoice loading and the matching, which will be one important challenge. And the capacity of the system for that purpose. And then some specifics with regard to the return mechanism of the exporters. I think the GSTN has to really put its own house in order. After all, evolution of technology of this kind also takes a little time.
So the teething problems, probably one more quarter, probably to go, and then,
These are transition stages, and with every day the situation improves.
So no worries as of now on the number of returns being filed, especially 3B and all that?
You see, I'll tell you, this is a fact of compliance which the trade has to look into. For instance, if you look at the first month itself, when we should have really expected about 85 lakh odd returns, you've touched a figure of 56 lakhs, and there are 14 lakhs more in the composition scheme.
Right.
So once the compositions are filed, and assuming everybody files a composition, you'll be close to 70 lakhs, as against the 80 odd that you expected. For the first month, it's not a terrible showing, it's not a bad showing. Of course, I wish India was a utopian state where you have 100% compliances, but we know we are in a real world. It doesn't take place like that.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So moving away slightly from GST, on to the macro thing. One or two just last questions. So I suppose in the Gyan Sangam, the Prime Minister had probably indicated his mind that it's time for a overhaul of the income tax law. Now, we're in the midst of a lot of very important economic reforms. Is that also on the cards as of now,
You see,
probably
I'll
later?
tell you, we are gradually reforming the whole income tax. Let's be very clear. From the time we took over until today, has filing a return and getting your assessment order and refunds become simpler. You have a one-page return. You don't even need to go to a chartered accountant. If you have a simple return, if you have a complicated return, you need to go. 99% plus file it online. More than 99% of the returns are today accepted as they are filed by the software system, and the assessment orders reach you online. Where queries are necessary, they are asked online. There is the minimal interaction. It's only in hard scrutiny cases, which is less than 1%, that you go to the tax authorities. Your refunds are mostly reaching you within the first 1 month of the return itself, or thereafter. You get an intimation. Now, gone are the days where everything, the inspector used to come and ask money for the refunds and so on. So a lot of interaction has been actually eliminated as far as the tax is concerned. Our composition scheme for professionals and for traders and manufacturers, professionals up to 50 lakh income and traders up to 2 crore turnover, has been extremely successful. So we are trusting them with their accounts, and they come in, we don't check their books, they just give the income, and the presumptive tax is paid.
So probably not necessary as of now to really overhaul? Because
Well, I don't think there is any such proposal to change the Act as such, but within the Act, reforms will be a continuous process.
And so one last question, sir. On the fiscal front, you have made it amply clear a number of times that, sticking to the fiscal...
You see, we'll try and stick to the targets. We are committed to a glide path. Now, how steep or smooth that glide path is will depend on what the resources available are.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you so much for speaking to CNBC TV18. What a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much.